Hello everybody, welcome to 2024. Today I want to talk about soul damage. I've done another podcast on soul damage in terms of addictions, and you can find that in my soul playlist. But this is more for everyday people, everyday living, that we can have damage to the soul. Usually there's two areas the soul gets damaged in. It's usually emotional and then a mental one. They can also be psychological, but I found when I was checking around that most people have either mental damage or emotional damage to the soul. So we have the three parts of us. We've got the body, the mind, and the soul. The soul is the more etheric one. That's the vibration, the one that's the highest vibration. And when we die, we leave the body behind. The soul releases and goes. So it's our soul, that's our spiritual body. There's all different ideas around the soul and about spirit, whether that's a spiritual body or soul body, but I won't get into that. Everyone's got different views on that one, which is quite interesting. I just want to talk about damage, and for you to have a look at that and have a think about that in terms of you, and also anyone else you know who's really had a lot of suffering. They've probably got damage there. So the soul can be damaged emotionally. It's something that's very precarious, the soul, and spirit usually try to get us to protect the soul. For example, if you're in a car accident, sometimes the soul will just jump out, leave the body there, and then when it's safe, come back in. That's why those people have those weird experiences. During operations that happens, and during terrible shock that happens. And I think that's where the saying is that I feel beside myself, because you literally are. You jump out to the side, your soul releases, so it won't get damaged. However, if you don't get out, it will get damaged, and you cannot even know you have that kind of damage. The emotional damage will obviously be from emotional trauma that you've had, emotional upset, distress, any of those negative experiences for you emotionally, where you got really, really upset or really overwrought. If there's been any trauma or abuse in your life, you'll have that damage, you'll have emotional damage from it. And that kind of damage is very hard to pick, because it's actually all about how you feel. And once the soul is actually damaged in that area, you'll have a certain feeling, but you'll almost be used to it. So you won't even know it's there. That's why I want to do this podcast, for you to have a think about whether you have either emotional or mental soul damage. It will be a feeling always of being stressed, a feeling of being wired, a feeling of being not safe, not being able to cope emotionally with things, and getting overwhelmed very, very quickly. And that's because you've got too much soul damage and in the emotional part. The other part is the mental damage in the soul, and that's when you've gone through a lot of mental difficulty, maybe been very overwhelmed, maybe had a lot of struggled mentally with coping on Earth here, which is very hard down here, and you might have then mental damage. It's like the damage comes in the soul when there's too much. The soul can't almost process it, and then you'll have that kind of damage. Most people do walk around with a little bit, but if you have a lot of it, particularly in one area, you'll find that it really impedes your life down here, makes life much more difficult, because you can't really cope, because you're not emotionally coping or mentally. There's some poor souls who have both the emotional damage and then also the mental damage, so they're actually carrying two loads. But most of us just have a predominance, I think, of one. If you think about it, you'll know which one you are, whether you know it's emotional or mental. And when I'm talking about mental, I'm not talking about particularly having a diagnosed mental illness. I'm talking about the damage to the actual soul. So your soul got mentally damaged, it couldn't do it anymore, it was too hard, it was too much, and you have to have some respite to heal from it. You could sort of get stuck there too, that's what I found. So even people who've done a lot of work on themselves will find that it can be actually stuck. They can still be carrying a lot of emotional damage especially from abuse, I find, which then can lead to problems with addiction. They sort of go hand in hand a little bit. The mental damage is the same. You can have a lot of mental damage, and that can cause you to go into addictive behaviours and things like this. I feel that often the damage is done when we're young. We might not even realise, because we can't remember when we were little and the things were scary for us, but there was damage there. And often the damage is done on that first episode. So the first time something really bad happened to you, even if you can't remember it, your soul didn't get out of your body to protect itself and got damaged. I remember I was working on somebody, was doing healing, and when I was near his head, he had leukemia, and when I was working on him, it was really interesting because like his body went like a banana shape. I could see it. I thought, wow, this is weird, but I didn't say anything. And then after the healing, I actually spoke to him and I said, your body went really weird. Did you feel it? He said, yeah, it went like a banana. I said, yeah, I felt that too. And then I checked in with someone else who was an intuitive like me, and they explained that the spirit people that I was working with, the angels, whatever you guardians, they actually took his soul out. I've lifted it out. Then I did the work. And then when the work was finished, put him back in there so the soul didn't get damaged. It was like a protective thing. Now, you might not have been able to get out to stop the damage in time. And that's why you'll have that. And the other thing too is if it's relentless, it's going on and on and on, soul will sort of get damaged because it just can't repair itself. I want you to do some repair work on yourself. Use your modalities and see if you can release any soul damage emotionally or mentally. You can ask yourself with your pendulum, you can use kinesiology and ask yourself which one you have. If you're lucky you don't have any, that would be really cool. But I found that a lot of people did have it, and the degree is what makes their life down here more difficult. Because if you have a little bit of damage, like a little bit of emotional damage, maybe out of 10 you've got 2, you're going to have a different life to someone who's got 9. And therefore your experience of life will be quite compromised because of it. It's also good to do it because the soul travels from lifetime to lifetime. And if we do the work here now, when we cross and take our soul with us, we would have actually healed some of it. It's like the pre-healing before you go on your next journey, your next life that you're going to choose. To do it is actually quite powerful because you're actually healing yourself for the future almost. And there is a belief that there's no time, obviously, but in spiritual life, there's a belief that all our lives are going on at the same time. So whatever we do in this life will affect all the other lives in that time capsule, almost, to say. This is quite advanced work, I feel. When they showed me, I think it was last week, to do this work, and I went around and checked and cleared off the damage from quite a few people I know, I found it was really powerful because we can heal the soul as well. It's not just the physical body or the mind. You can also send healing if you think someone's got a lot of emotional soul damage. You can send healing to them to fix it, or mental, and that can help them, remembering that they will receive or not as they choose to. The work's quite profound, I would say profound, because the effects that we can have from the damage are so profound, and therefore to release it and heal it is going to make everything just so much better. You might start to feel calmer if it's emotional. You might start to feel happier. If it's mental, you might feel like you can cope with more and you're not going to fall over because you can't mentally cope anymore. So all those huge issues that you've been having in those 2 areas, that can just go away when you do the work. I really encourage you to do it. If you don't know where it is in you, I would just do both. Just do emotional, mental. They're the ones we're talking about today. And I feel like by doing that, by healing your soul, your healing will go further down into your mind and then into your body and into your chakras, into the meridian. It's like downloads there. So this work is really big, and I think it's kind of going to help us from not getting sick and also feeling better and be able to cope better mentally down here, which I think is really, really important. So that's your stuff for this week. I think you'll find it really interesting. You can always send me a little message on my YouTube if you want to about how you went, because I'd be kind of fascinated. And I think knowing this, you might look at people and think, oh, I think you've got a lot of emotional damage on a soul level. I think, or mental. I think you're going to see it more, because once we know about it, then we can see it and we can do the work. So I'm wishing you a good week as usual and sending you lots of love and light.